Kata. So that's kata. Being able to do a reflex, having autonomic behavior, right? Habits that are built in. We see it in karate. We see it in kabuki theater. It's actually used now in organizational structure of how people do things. In 2013 at DevOps Days New York, Bethany Marcy from Etsy gave this great presentation about blameless postmortems. And near the end, she was asked, how do they ensure that action items get followed up on? And look at her face when you see, she says, I don't know how to answer that question. I don't understand what you're talking about. This was because she had a behavior pattern that was autonomic. The chance of that happening in that culture was so driven that that would never happen. She couldn't understand the question. Aristotle says we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act but a habit. These things that become autonomic, we create a vision in our organization that where we try to drive habits to become autonomic. Etsy is a famous company for DevOps and DevOps culture. Bethany comes from there. They practice a safety culture, a blameless culture. A lot of great stories about Etsy, but this isn't an Etsy story. This is a story about Toyota Production Systems and Toyota Kata. I read this book this summer by Mike Rother. And what's interesting about this book is he basically talks about the invisible side of the success of Toyota. The things that people didn't see, the kata, the behavior, the autonomics of how they did things. And if you want to understand Toyota, you got to go back way deep to like the original founder of Toyota Motor Systems. He was asked about some stolen designs that they had, and he said, you know, we don't care. We improve our process every day. By the time the crooks actually build a machine, we'll be so far ahead of them. And then if you go to Toyoichi Ono, who is the father of Toyota Production Systems, he was once asked, why do you let all these American companies come in and copy what you're doing? And he said they can copy our process, but they can't copy our culture. They couldn't see the invisible part. In this book, Mike Rother talks about Toyota's a story about techniques. It's not a story about techniques. It's an organization that's primarily defined by the unique behavior routines that they continually teach. This is towards their vision. And see, the thing is, Kata, we say things like culture in DevOps, but really what we're looking for is habits that become autonomic. And the things, like, again, if you think of what Bethany did, like that was autonomic behavior, the thought of actually not following up on an action item. And the thing is with the Kata, there are visible parts that you can look for: scientific method, depersonalization, non-blameful culture, non-deterministic thinking. You don't use checklists to things. And I'd be remiss not to mention the father of all of this, Dr. Deming. Deming went to Japan in the late 40s and 50s, and is really actually considered the Shakespeare of the movement that like shaped all management thinking in Toyota. And Ben Rockwood says, dude, it all starts with Deming, and I totally agree. And Deming actually did things about, like, he preached scientific method through something called PDCA. He also, 50 years ago, was already designing what we talk about system thinking. It's the system, it's not the people. He had his 94%, 6% rule. And in Mike Rother's book, he basically talks about two things: improvement kata and coaching kata. Improvement kata is based on rigorous scientific method for solving problems. Coaching kata is a mentor-mentee relationship. Everybody at Toyota had a mentor-mentee relationship. Another thing that's interesting about this story is you see vision all the time. At Toyota, vision was a true north. You see that broken arrow? They knew that the vision was impossible, but they always tried to get a target condition to get there. So they assessed current condition, target condition. And what's even more important, when they tried to solve problems, they knew they had to use, they called it the gray zone. They knew that you had to apply non-deterministic thinking. You couldn't checklist step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. That's not how problems get solved. And the coaching kata is basically an emphasis of the learner learning. It's a learn by doing model. And everybody around the learnee is coaching and helping, but it was important at Toyota that the learner learned how to do things, even to the extent that if the coach actually knew a better answer, they knew that learning at scale required that the answer that the actual learner did, even if it wasn't as good, was a better solution at scale. There's this famous thing called the andon cord at Toyota. And basically it was a rope that anybody could stop the line. And here's the thing. When they stopped the line, the first thing that happened to Toyota is they were thanked for stopping the line before they even knew what the problem was. And the second thing that happened was, how can we help you fix the problem? And that started a culture of just improvement and change. I am John Willis, Botchick Loop on Twitter. I have all the references. I think it's an amazing book written by Mike Rother. Thank you very much.